Shalom, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. What a special opportunity for everybody to come together, our global community of virtual citizens of Israel. I hope that for each of you joining us, you have come across Israel Forever, either as a longtime member of our community or as someone new who has encountered Israel Forever through social feeds or other local connections. We have been, for now all of these 9 months, hosting this gathering, a virtual opportunity for people like yourselves to come together and talk. There are many today who feel quite isolated from the local communities in which they live and maybe are looking for ways that they could be doing more, or at least finding inspirational ways that they can cope with the many emotional elements of what we're dealing with. Over these months, each month, on the 7th of the month, we find ourselves shocked once again. I'm not sure about you, but Shabbat morning yesterday, and maybe even every Shabbat, we always have this feeling here in Israel like, could it be? Did it really happen? Even in our wanting to connect, sometimes we are still astounded, amazed that this could actually be happening. So each month that we've been gathering with you, our members of our global community, we have been giving you an opportunity to share with us what you are dealing with, what you are thinking, feeling, hearing, what you are bringing as a part of your activism in your local community. So, like each month's program, our goal is to come together as community members who maybe don't know each other, and we each have our own reality, but we need a place where we can feel connected. We need a space where it is indeed a safe space. And we hope that we've been able to provide this for those of you in our community. I see some familiar names and faces who have joined us more than once. We want to thank you for coming back and being a part of Israel Forever. We, of course, hope that you will invite your friends and family to come and explore this unique way that we at Israel Forever try to make it all personal. On this month, our 9th month, there is an increased sensitivity that many of us are feeling. 9 months has its power in our minds. We automatically have the association of the 9 months of pregnancy. Tisha Yalchei Leida. It's a part of the song that we've been singing for generations. 9 months. There are some people who are saying, don't make these associations. That's dangerous. It only evokes increased tension for many of us. But we also know that here on the ground in Israel, experts are being prepped in what to do should unwanted pregnancies from terror rape be a reality that we have to face. But out in the world, what we're facing is the denial of that terror rape. So simultaneously, we're having to fight for our rights in the story of our women and men. The abuse that has taken place over these months is not only to our women, it is to all of our 120 hostages, those who have already been murdered in captivity or whose bodies were kidnapped, having been killed, and of course, those, and we hope the majority of whom are still alive, and who we hope are sustaining their strength and their hope within captivity. So tonight's program invites you to share what you are dealing with, what your questions are, how we can help each other in this virtual space that we've been trying to provide for you. We want to ask each one of you to keep your comments to a 2-minute window so that we do allow each other on this 9th month anniversary of this catastrophe that we are all coping with, that we can finally hear each other and start to migrate into the new rebirth that 9 months perhaps represents, that we move out of our Shiv'ah, our mourning, and we move into a time period where we know that right now, everywhere in the world, people are claiming October 7th as a day of Palestinian national liberation. And they are marching through your streets, and they are occupying public and private spaces alike. And we have to do everything possible to find a way to breathe, to find a way to breathe new life into our energies, to find a way to move beyond just expecting social media influencers to be our voices, but to realize that we each have a voice of our own. And maybe you have a voice that you'd like to share. So as we open up our discussions tonight, I invite you to use the chat. Tell us where you're from. You're, of course, welcome to raise your hand, and we'll be, you can see me migrating around because this is truly an informal gathering. Um, Today's program is recorded, and we do try to capture some of the really honest kernels of wisdom and feeling, the empathy that we're feeling. And we try to capture that and share it with others through our social media feeds. We do try to, of course, make sure that your privacy is protected. So you're welcome to also reach out and let us know if you'd like your name hidden. Many more people are seeking to hide their identity right now. They're looking inward. They're finding ways that they can be active without having to be in a public space, without having to put their lives in danger, because it is increasingly frightening. So as we cross these 9 months and the associations that it brings to mind, can we find a way to breathe? I also want to, of course, bring to light some of the other facts of the day that we need to realize, which is that our northern border is on fire. And our citizens from the north, their houses are destroyed, their farms are destroyed. The Golan and the Galil that we all love so much, many, I'm shocked to find, have no idea this is happening. They don't know the extent of the terror that's taking place inside of Judea and Samaria, Yehuda v'Shamron, the appropriate terminology by which that we should all reference what is otherwise called the West Bank. We want to make sure that we are keeping you guys informed and that you feel informed with all of the things that are taking place. Some of these are very disturbing, what's happening inside of Israel. We're seeing anti-government rallies again taking to the streets, creating an image of division amongst the Israeli population. And from a distance, that is incredibly damaging. We hear a lot of complaints about how Israeli hasbara, it isn't good enough. But are we hearing enough complaints and constructive criticism on how we can encourage diaspora Jews to utilize the hasbara that is in place to do better out in the diaspora? Because Israel needs our global community of virtual citizens of Israel like yourselves to be a part of that army, to be a part of that fight. We know that there have been attacks in the last weeks everywhere in the world. The 12-year-old girl who was raped, gang raped in France, the elderly woman who was also attacked in France, screaming that she's a Jew and therefore she deserved it. And this is the grandmother of one of our members of Knesset. But we also see elderly in North Carolina, on the streets of New York, being physically attacked, spit at, screamed at. We know that there have been families who are at their children's graduation of kindergarten and they're being beaten. There are the stories you haven't heard, maybe, because they're underreported for people's interest in saving their own privacy, in saving themselves from the impact of the trauma. Maybe there are instances that you have experienced and you're looking for a place to share because maybe, just maybe, you're also not ready to report it because, as one person told me just a couple of days ago, even if I report it, nobody cares. There's no legal action. There's no actual response because everybody says it's in the name of free speech. And so it's crucial that we're sharing our voices. So I'd like to welcome you again to our very special program, which is 9 months of holding our breath, 9 months of seeking ways to cope, but also seeking ways to make change. Israel Forever is proud to welcome you as a part of our global community, and thank you again for joining us. Who tonight would like to share something about what you're seeing, feeling, thinking, and doing to face these challenging times? Scott, thank you for joining us again.
I'm an oddball and I come at things eclectically. But
I think every Jew right now, Scott, every Jew is feeling a little bit like an oddball. So, maybe you've got some shared company here tonight. We really do thank you. I know that you come from a unique situation and a unique reality, and we really welcome you and your voice to be part of our community.
I wanted to report that I attended a meeting of the the Committee on Reconciliation. Very bad with names and better with concepts, whatever they call themselves. But they finally blocked me from getting into the chat because I kept pointing out, divine forbid, I pointed out facts. Because they're talking about reconciliation, that's the label they use. But of course, it started with the premise, and there were Jews there. Started with the premise, two premises. First of all, that Israel's an apartheid state, which is what I used to believe until I did the research. And the fact that it just ain't. It just isn't.
Right.
And that there's
the majority of people who claim that the majority of people who claim that it is are individuals who have been so brainwashed by the rhetoric, but have actually never stepped foot on the ground or been willing to do the research that it sounds like you've been willing to do. Takes work.
Well, I don't, it does, but I don't have much else to do here. I'm literally losing my life in an improper housing situation. No fooling, but that's another issue. But so I don't want too much credit, and then of course the other one was the genocide.
Right.
There is a bombing going on because we all know, which when I come back at people about it, I don't call them anti-Semitic necessarily or none of that, but I point out facts. And, there's a war on. There's two facts. First of all, there's a war on. And we don't have time here. We're in a limit here. But there are so many facets to this that I have observed, put together. I'm very good at putting together disparate elements. Okay. Probably as good as anyone you know, and possibly better than anyone else. And people sometimes they use little tricks for their side of the argument that most people might not even notice.
Sure. Manipulations of terminology and things like this.
Well, like not to digress, not to waste time here, but as an example, one man on Quora, there's a online magazine, Quora, it's people get together. And he said, they didn't find a James Bond style layer underneath of the hospital. Notice two things going on here. First of all, they sure as hell did find under the hospital. They found plenty.
Right.
But no one ever said, but by saying a James Bond style layer, he distracts by using the abstract phrase.
Turning it into entertainment.
Right. And no one ever said they did.
Right.
What was found, of course, were spaces set up for offices and piles of caches for weapons, et cetera. Of course, they did find it.
Mm-hmm.
The tunnel system, as we know, is probably the most elaborate ever built in the entire world, more so than what was used in Vietnam. But I mean, somehow I'm very good at picking up tiny little details like that.
I
And
think that that's I think that that's very helpful that you're able to identify. Would you, Scott, be able to suggest to other members of our discussion tonight? Would you be able to suggest things that would help them uncover those details? Is there something that you feel is a constructive suggestion for others who are looking to do that as well? Because you mentioned Quora. I think we can also add Reddit as one of those other platforms where they're really dominating conversation. Again, TikTok, Threads, you name it, they're dominating the conversation.
they're not succeeding in dominating all that much on Quora that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for one thing, I can pick up on these things, and yet I do literally have problems with concentrating because of my brain.
Mm.
This is bizarre, and we're not here to talk about my health problems, but suffice it to say that, things aren't always what they appear on the surface. I'm also involved in anti-psychiatry because,
Mm-hmm.
I'm here because of the hegemony of that system. So I do
Well,
know.
that's a topic for a whole other time, because we here in Israel are seeing the essential need for all forms of therapy in order to help our families here that are coping. I think that it's important actually to use your introduction of the concept, thank you, to be able to emphasize that there are many people who are looking for ways that they can make a difference. And advocacy and explanation, hasbara, is very much important, and fighting those fights, even on Quora or Reddit, going into Wikipedia, making sure we're correcting the lies that are being spread through these pages. But I also think, by the way, for those of you who are out there, that some of the therapeutic value that you can be bringing, whether it's to those in Israel who are suffering from trauma, but also those in your own community who are coping with a fear factor that they're not sure how to control. So I think that, Scott, it's good that you bring it up, and I understand that personally it isn't for you, but we do want to recognize, especially now, when we think about these families, these mothers of daughters who are hostages for 9 months. And we saw the video from October 7th, and we've seen the evidence. And yes, we know that Israel is being transparent, and yet it's all being distorted. Roger Waters and other major figures in every society are denying the facts. But we heard the terrorists say, these girls, we will get pregnant. And here, as we pass 9 months.
Well, some of the
Can
people such as Roger Waters are just, I'm going to keep my language clean here because, yes, it upsets me. They're
Please.
damned lazy to
But
do
they're not.
research.
They are not. It's very important that we recognize individuals. I want to give other people a chance also, Scott, to talk, but we have to recognize that individuals like Roger Waters are actually, it's not that he's lazy. It's that he has a core ideology that is fueling whatever lies he has been fed to believe over the years, and they are rooted in traditional anti-Semitic tropes, accusing Israel of the things that he claims about Israel is something that is simply a tactic, which is what you mentioned at the beginning of your comments. They're using manipulative tactics. And one of the questions I'm going to throw back out to our community here is, what are you doing in your community or in your life to help counter some of those toxic impact that we are feeling? So, Scott, thank you for sharing. I do want to see who else might be interested in sharing from your experience or your thoughts of how you're coping today. Scott has mentioned being involved in some conversations, using your facts, using the information that you can find, and making sure that we counter the lies that are claims of apartheid or genocide, by using the transparent evidence that's being provided by Israel, by the IDF, we can say Hasbara isn't great, but the information is there for all of us to use it. Robert, I'll ask you to unmute yourself and welcome you to speaking with us tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Ilana and everyone else on the call. This is my first time. I had no idea what to expect, to be honest with you. But I have been receiving your emails over the last 3 to 6 months, and I find the information very helpful. I'm also connected to other ministries, IFCJ, Combat Anti-Semitism Movement, and some of the others. What I'm doing in my community is I lead a prayer group at our church for the nation of Israel. And as a matter of fact, tonight we're going to be meeting. And because we're meeting tonight, I wanted to hear from some of y'all on what are some of those really hard issues that are touching people's heart. So when I go and talk to my team, I can be talking educated and maybe some of the things that aren't in the news that you don't necessarily hear. So that's the main reason why I thought I'd jump on. I met my wife 26 years ago. She's 100% Ashkenazi Jew. And so that's kind of where my connection to the Jewish people is. But over the last maybe 10 years or so, God has started to really put a burden on my heart for the Jewish people. And I'm looking, I watch I-24 News. I'm constantly trying to stay abreast of what's going on there so I can be a resource in my community, in my church, for the people of not only of Israel, but Jewish people all over the world, or even just in my community. I do remember when I grew up, some of my closest friends were Jewish. And when I look back, I was like, I wonder if this was something that God had been doing throughout my life, but I just never realized it. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing right now is I lead a prayer group for Israel and the Jewish people. I put out a little monthly newsletter to our team, to our church, and I just want to hear about other people and what they're going through. I'm sure the emotional burden has got to be terrible. I mean,
Yeah. Well, I don't think anybody would lie and say that it's anything but. It is. I think there's an ongoing need for survival mechanisms that we are all employing, whether they be emotional and some of us physical, depending on where we might be. I just
right.
want to start off by saying, Robert, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's always a pleasure to welcome new members to our community discussions. I've been doing a lot of work over the years with interfaith groups, and especially since October 7th, we're seeing an increase in interest of active engagement as opposed to just talking, people looking for ways that they can actually come together. Prayer being definitely one of the most valuable for many people. I think that these prayer circles, I've also heard from people that the question of, well, what good is it? If I'm not a faithful person, if I'm not a religious person, how is my prayer actually helping when we're facing an existential war? But we see doubt, but we also see increased interest. People who never prayed before, who are since October 7th awakening to a new identity, whether they be Jewish or not Jewish, waking up and saying, maybe there is something happening in the world today. God is sending us lessons. He's sending us opportunities. And as tragic, and it is tragic and painful, and we are dealing with this suffocating feeling every day, I can say that for myself, prayer has also been an essential component of the ongoing coping. I've been counseling some people and communities on certain prayers that they could be incorporating into their services, into their mailings. Israel Forever does try to help locals to find information, inspiration, and activities that can be done by a common person or a local community. And adding these prayers is really a beautiful thing that can be done. One of the practices that we often encourage people to do is not only to share in their prayers the names of the hostages, but also to start sharing stories of survivors of the massacre, as well as the stories of the victims. And the stories of the victims are incredibly painful. And in order to capture them, in order to find them, you often have to delve into that dark, dark day.
Right.
I don't know if everybody's ready for that. I don't know if people feel capable. During the Holocaust, much of the grotesque reality was hidden. It was kept secret out of really people who survived. They didn't want to be seen as victims in the eyes of the others. They had survived. Nowadays, post October 7th, we're seeing survivors of this massacre go on and tell their story again and again and again, and for a different reason, because so many people are denying that it happened. So many people are denying the facts. So, Robert, I would suggest that you not only demonstrate to your community how grateful the Jewish people are for friends of Israel and the Jewish people like yourself, but that their prayers count, that we are welcoming to them as virtual citizens of Israel, that they can be pilgrims for interfaith interactions. And I think these are the kinds of ways where we can also help our non-Jewish friends to learn, what does it mean to fight this anti-Semitism? Because we know that what starts with the Jews doesn't end with the Jews. We have heard some of these extremist imams proclaim, first we will come, as they did in the Nazi era, first we will come for the Saturday people, and then we will come for the Sunday people. And we're hearing it
Right.
from people since October 7th, when even the heads of Hamas, who somehow are still on all of being interviewed everywhere like they're celebrities, and they're laughing and saying, oh, we would do October 7th again and again, ha, ha, ha. And we have to put this face forward to people like you and your communities and say, do not ignore the banality of the evil as it's being embraced even in our own societies. Let's make sure that we are giving people the language to speak more. So, Robert, your efforts are commendable. We do also recommend that you look in terms of resources. Checking in the media is very difficult. What we've provided is a fact book that is called Beyond the Lies, that we can provide to communities. We even have the ability to, send you a number of copies for all of your community, so that they really feel not only that they have the facts in hand, and it has infographics, which are also important, so that they help people visualize some of the information that is so shocking to have to learn, but also discussion questions, because the conversations that we're having are crucial to making sure that the information, which can often go in one ear and out the other, is actually transmitted in a communicative way, and a way that people will absorb it, internalize it, and say, I'm going to do something with the information that's now been given me. So, Robert,
Yeah.
if there's anything that we can provide for you, and anybody would like to perhaps share, Robert, you had asked, you'd like to hear how other people are feeling. So from those of you who are with us, what would you like to share about how you're feeling dealing with this difficult time, so that Robert can share? And Robert, tell us, where are you from?
I'm currently living I live in South Florida with my wife here in Pembroke Pines near Hollywood, Florida.
Okay, great. That's great. It's nice to always get to know, we do some work with communities, Michigan, Minnesota, South Carolina, North Carolina, Southern California, and it's great to be able to talk with you from Florida. Would anybody like to share? What are you thinking, feeling? How would you respond to Robert's request to be able to share something personal that helps him deepen what he's hoping to inspire in his community? Go ahead. You can unmute yourself, Judith. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm a psychologist in Germany, and I would just say that I'm sorry, I'm a little bit sick, so I'm kind of froggy here. I have to say that I've been grateful to the German government, where they came out very strongly that jihadism was not going to be acceptable in the streets, different from England, where there was a lot of hateful demonstrations that were not controlled. But the German government made it very clear they wouldn't accept hateful. First of all, hate talk is not allowed in Germany. Anyway, it's illegal, but also that there would be people could question, let's say, the Israeli government's politics, but they couldn't speak in a hateful way. You know, death to Jews, death to Israel, any form of hatefulness or violence would be unacceptable. So I felt very grateful for that. I would say that October 7th, I went into a tailspin. I went into a very deep tailspin, and I was horrified. I didn't look at all the images, of course, because I didn't want to traumatize myself, but I listened to interviews with people. I watched the Nova Festival. I watched plenty to inform myself, to say what is going on here. I did not want to close my eyes. I've always been a pacifist and always been, I would say, you know, I had a very strong Orthodox Jewish training as a child. And I always took my Jewish identity very seriously, insofar as being a Jew means making the world a better place. That as a Jew, that's your mandate, to leave the world a better place than what you found. And I've devoted my life in that vein on many different levels. So while I hold a very deep Jewish identity, I also have worked internationally and across for diversity in many different kinds of ways in different phases of my life. Including, you know, peace now and wanting to find some peaceful solution between the Palestinians and the Israelis, once and for all, always claiming that Israel was the wound of the planet and we needed to heal it. That I've always felt that way. But when October 7th happened, it went for me to such a deep place. I think for a lot of us Jewish people, it opened up that whole history we have of being considered enemies and being so easily being able to be violated. Okay, and as a lot of the kibbutzim near the border who were very peaceful and open to the Palestinians, I went into a tailspin, like, what the hell is this? Including Palestinians who worked in the kibbutzim and were informers, and they were being treated respectfully, and they went back to Hamas and informed against the people they were working for. I was horrified on several levels. One is a Jewish person with a deep Jewish pride and identity, and from my ancestors, that how, you know, this massacre could just be carried out like that. The other, as a humanist, that in 2024, that people could be such horrid human beings. I was traumatized, and so I went into a tailspin. You know, I thought, these young men, like, what a horror scene. You know, instead of being taught hate, why aren't they being taught, you know, electrical engineering or some technical skill and do something for their country, instead of talking about hating Jewish people and Christian or whatever, whomever they decide to hate. And the scenes I saw were just horrid. So I went into a tailspin. When I go into a tailspin, I study. I study, and I went back and reviewed the whole history of the region from ancient times. I went back and was studying Hebrew. I was studying Jewish law. I was listening to interviews from all sides, from the Palestinians and the Israelis, and listening to interviews of the people went through Nova Festival. I spent hours and hours listening to everything to find some place inside of myself where I could take a stand. And the stand
And
I'm
also
taking,
probably if we can add, Judith, to reconcile a shattered element of your identity, that it's like we had to see it again and again to say, is this really possible in this manner, when I believed in peace to such a degree that peace was possible? It is, do you feel that that was for you? Like, if you saw it more and more, it helped you to actually digest the facts, digest the reality.
well, and yes and no. I mean, I'm very aware that anti-Semitism exists. I've never been under the illusion that it was gone, okay? And I've always said to people, if you just scratch people a little bit, the anti-Semitism will come up. But that doesn't mean that I ever walked around, paranoid or fearful or, singling out different groups. On the contrary, it made me work for peace more, work for understanding more, diversity more, in the good Jewish tradition, that we are here to celebrate life in all forms. And, as a Jewish person, you protect your own, but you protect humanity. And that's been my position. And I feel that is the greatest protection when we honor diversity, which is the beauty of our planet, okay? And also, at this point, is to say, when any form, where I am, any form of hatred has to be confronted. Any form of anti-Semitism, I am convinced that anti-Semitism is the precursor to fascism wherever it wreaks its ugly head. And that we need to support Israel, and we need to support the democracy that Israel is, and the amazing society that was created in Israel. And, again, watching the UN was horrifying. Watching the Arab leaders stand up and be hypocritical. The denial of the rape of Jewish women, not just Jewish women, but the women in the kibbutzim and at the festival, the denial and the lack of support of women who've been violated. It's just horrifying. So my position now is no to violence. Palestinians, enough being victims. You had your land for 2005. You had billions of euros poured into us in Europe, gave you money to develop a country. Think about developing your people, think about developing your country, and stop violence against Israel and Jews. It's ridiculous. Develop yourself.
But unfortunately, that ridiculousness is now dominating the public discussion. It
Yeah,
has
but
now taken over July 4th celebrations with flag burnings. It has taken over political. Now, you mentioned earlier that, so you have illegal hate talk, but you can question Israeli policies, even though, very interestingly, we see that the questioning of Israeli policies is driven by the double standard that people have for Israel, because it is a Jewish state. Things that any other country has, has done, Israel is demonized for it. And we have great.
There are double standards, and I'm absolutely convinced of that. Assad murdered millions of Muslims and nobody was on the streets.
That's
and then, Israel gets attacked, and Israel says to Hamas, put down your arms, stop the violence, and we won't have war. But Hamas said no. So Israel says, okay, we're at war. You declared war. You're not willing to put down your arms. And then, of course, Israel becomes the bad guy, of course. Okay?
That's a
double standard. That's a double
standard. There are some effects to this actually being drawn out over all of these months. which is that Hamas has succeeded in demonstrating Israel as the problem, Israel as the one not willing to offer peace, not willing to stand by a ceasefire, the one who is refusing the rights of innocent civilians, the one who, the responsible party. In the history of war, there has never been in a situation where the country that was attacked was responsible for providing not just humanitarian aid, not just assistance to the refugees, but also food, water, and now food, water, and electricity having been turned on. And it's those of us who pay taxes who of course have to pay for their world to be subsisting, even while they cheer for our death. We're living in a very complex time where it is no longer white and black. And I know we can't even use those phrases anymore, but it's no longer only these two clear-cut sides, such as Judith, you suggested. Back in the day when Peace Now was initiated, it was that they tried to develop it on a simplistic level. I heard one of the released hostages, I'll forget her name, unfortunately, right now. We had at my Moshav's Shabbat, we just had a couple of the released hostages, a mother and her daughter, whose twin cousins are still being held hostage. And they spoke to our community, and we recited prayers and sang songs of support together. And one of the things that they speak about is, she says, I lived by radical empathy. I loved this term she used, that she lived by radical empathy for the Palestinians at the expense of empathy for our own Jewish rights to live. And it was very fascinating to hear her speak, because that is where she's taking everyone today, that there is no hope for such peace in that way anymore, that a two-state solution is a non-viable solution, that all of the calls to recognize a state of Palestine are completely illegitimate, because they are rewarding rape with a terror state. So I think that this radical empathy, Judith, I'll direct the question to you, and then we'll see who else in our group would like to share tonight. But do you think that there is an alternative to radical empathy with the Peace Now initiative of put all of our care for the innocent Palestinians? Do you think there's an alternative where we could arouse compassion for Jews? Because we're not parading our dead, and we don't put our displaced families off, on parade in front of the media. We don't take the dead stories public.
But
Are
first
we
of all,
missing? Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to finish what I was saying, because
Yes.
there's still a lot of unknowns about what happened on October 7th. There's a lot of issues about how it happened, the lack of security. I don't agree with all of the government's decisions, or myself personally. I think, it's too to the right for me. But which doesn't mean that's neither here nor there. Israel's a democracy, and you stand with where you feel, is correct for society, in a peaceful way. I think we need to be careful, and first of all, affirm Jewishness on all levels. What the Jewish history is, what Jewish people contribute to society, which is enormous. We're only 150 million people in the world. And yet, such a focus. It's kind of it's a real phenomenon when you think about it. Well, you have 2 billion Muslims in the world. We have 150 million Jewish people in the world. And that's not very much. But yet, the impact is huge in terms of contribution. And I think we need to affirm the contribution of the Jewish people, period, and be proud of it, and proud of our ancestors, and proud of everything we've gone through. At the same time, to look the situation in Israel, there are too many pawns in Israel. You have Russia, you have Iran, you have the US, you have all these pawns in this area. And that makes the situation for the people of Israel, I think, very complicated. Um, I think Iran is one of the major players that needs to be dealt with. Um, and the kind of hatred it's spewing out is also something to be dealt with. But I think we
How do
need,
we trickle that down, Judith? How do we trickle that down to the common person? When we talk about things needing to be dealt with, so like for me, one of the things that I want to see dealt with is that we can recognize that we're not going to agree. It doesn't matter what government is in place. We're never going to agree with all of their behavior. And maybe we have to recognize the extent to which a war forces decisions that have to be made, even under circumstances we can't control, and we can't always make a right choice. It's a common phrase that was used during the Holocaust was the idea of choiceless choices. And here we are in a world where Israel is the ultimate of democracy, to the extent that we allow road closures and attacks because we want people to be able to express themselves. And yet we feel that the thing that one of the elements that needs to be solidified is how can we set personal politics to the side to ensure that we have a united front? You mentioned, for example, being able to affirm Jewishness. We have to realize that many of the anti-Israel activists are utilizing their Jewishness as a tool to demonize Israel and Zionist Jews. And we have to be very careful from continuing to allow that pattern. We have to stand up. Most of the vocal messages being sent is criticism of Israel. Have you ever seen in these 9 months a positive assessment of Israel and their behavior, either as a government or military during this war?
there's been a lot of,
Most likely,
there've been a lot of
most people
demonstrations coming out.
Most people, unfortunately, will have not, unless they
Yeah.
maybe, and I can tell, Judith, you're well read. Many people will not. And maybe it's one of the things we need to encourage people to do, which is to look at the transparency of the decisions being made to show that there is to date not even a single court who can hold the actions of Israel in a negative light. And you're right. Questions on October 7th, the
No question. Yeah.
ignoring signs, the
Yeah.
intelligence dilemmas. We are not at a shortage of problems. What I do think that we do when we come together in our community here and in these discussions is, okay, what are our solutions? How can we move ourselves forward? We are at a
Well,
9-month mark.
I just
What
want
do
to
we
say
do?
there have been demonstrations, beautiful demonstrations for Israel and against anti-Semitism. That I am very privy to and grateful to. I mean, one example is when Lula in Brazil, which also horrified me, when Lula came out against the state of Israel in the war against Hamas, there were thousands and thousands of people in the street of Sao Paulo supporting Israel. Just as an example, you know.
Yes, we've seen. These are wonderful, these displays. Again, I think that part of our goal is to say for the people who are at home, the people who are isolated, the people who are not interested in going to rallies, we're always exploring ways that the common person can make a difference. So let's just open it up to anybody else in our community tonight. Who might like to share something else about this 9-month crossing point where we can take from Judith's ideas and Robert's ideas and say, wait, and Scott's, and to say, okay, how are we able to find breath again, to retain more information, facts, and stories so that we can share them onward, protect the integrity of these this witness and this survival? What more are you doing in your community? Who else might like to share with us or ask a question to those who are joining us tonight?
Alana?
Yes.
Hi, Alana. It's Sahara.
Sahara.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? Wonderful to have you again with us. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
I know that it's not always a convenient time, which is why we make sure to capture these experiences, capture these gatherings, so that we can share them with others. who can continue to be inspired by even what we do. Should you be interested in your local community to host a small gathering, we're also here to help you and provide for you the resources. And Zava, you've been with us now for, I think, each one of our monthly gatherings. So thank you for
Yeah,
being with us again. Tell
yeah.
us how you've been dealing in this last month
Okay, well,
of coping.
thank you for asking. Well, first of all, I was headed back to Israel October 5th. I'm an Israeli citizen. So let's just say my life has been very bizarre. I literally live in America, but my heart is Israeli. So I want to
A
really focus.
quintessential virtual citizen of Israel. We
Yes,
love it.
yes. So let me tell you what I'm listening to and what I'm trying to sort out. The world of politics and the world of opinions and the world of facts and the world of ongoing, what I'm aware of is that this is a cancer. There's a cancer that is growing and growing and growing. So I'm asking myself, where are people that can be reached who are not being reached? And you said something earlier that people are becoming more isolated. I happen to be one of those people. So when I look at, and I don't listen to news, I go to where I can get facts that I feel have validity. That's what I can do right now. So I'm asking, we are becoming so more fearful to the point that it is, I think it's weakening our spirits, our souls as human beings, as Jews. So I know that Israel Forever is kind of like a conduit, but I'm just wondering, is there, I call it, is there kind of like a mothership where people could connect directly with others and not feel so protective, but protective, that this is a safe environment to make contact? Like the survivors, the Israelis, the mothers, do they know that people here in America are with them, who care, who are not into this, did this happen, did it not happen? This is, to me, for me, it's a waste of energy. It's a waste of
I,
energy.
I love this question. You've asked actually two different parts here. On one level, you're asking, how can we find the people who, like you, are looking to connect? On the
Yes.
other, you want to know if the people who really need the support are feeling that connection, even if it's not physically in their lives.
Right.
And I will tell you that, unfortunately, I don't Israelis have an understanding of the personal the empathy, the care, but we do so many we've created so many ways here in Israel that people have been able to express that, and that has become really crucial to their healing. I'll just, we have, for those of you who know, we have an amazing mosaics program where healing hearts mosaics are provided. Especially lately, we've been working with some of the elderly from the northern communities and the children, and being able to provide for them an opportunity to take the shattered pieces of their life and piece it back together into something beautiful. And these groups are so amazing that even while they're sitting there doing their mosaics, we'll put on music. Miriam, my partner, Miriam Gottlieb, and she will put on music, and you'll hear them just start singing. And then we'll read aloud some of the letters that we've been receiving, letters of support, and then they know. So getting the idea to the Israelis directly about how much empathy, how much care and compassion is out there, it does require connecting with organizations like Israel Forever and the many that have been developed over these months to try and share the voice of the diaspora with the heart of the Israeli. And we try to do everything we can to show Israelis that people care. But I've had children who say this: do they know we can't go home again? Do they know our houses are destroyed? So there is a dissonance between what they think the diaspora knows and the diaspora cares about. So that does exist. And then we go back to your first question, which is, where do you find the people who are like you? I think that now more than ever, social media platforms, which are shadow banning Jewish engagement.
Mhm.
I actually believe that Facebook groups are one of the most fundamental uh, ways to connect that people could be looking at. We have a group, Virtual Citizens of Israel. We also have a group for Israel Forever Ambassadors, for those who say, I want to do more. I don't want to just be a community member. I actually want to create some activism in my community. It's not always advocacy. Sometimes it is an art and craft project for
Mhm.
interfaith. Robert, you might like this. We have an interfaith project for creating mosaics together, where half of the mosaic goes into a synagogue and half of the mosaic goes into the church, and it's a symbol of unity in their community. So creating these organic ways to connect locally is wonderful, and also finding opportunities to talk within Facebook groups that maybe you haven't visited in ages, but
Mhm.
I think there's one group I'm a part of, Americans United, United with Israel, something like that. And you see that since October 7th, more and more conversation is happening. I'm going to add one warning, because also in these groups, there's more infiltration of
Mhm.
bots and of haters. So
Mhm.
you're constantly positioned to have to face some sort of an attack. And that drives people back into their private life. They don't want to engage. They don't want to be attacked. They don't want to have to be put in a position where they are called a baby killer. And, you call somebody that, it's like there's no value to continuing that dialogue. So I think, Zahava, there are a few options for you. And I will suggest one other space, by the way. The new Instagram community, which is Threads, already highly dominated by a lot of hate. But apparently, on the Instagram communities, this is a new way for those of you who are involved in Instagram. And for those of you who are more professionally minded and looking on networking within the professional arenas, LinkedIn is also starting to be a very interesting resource, a platform for engagement. So be creative in how you're looking to create those connections and
Mhm.
sustain them.
Mhm.
I had a meeting with a group of people. It took about 6 or 7 exchanges before they even believed I was who I said I was. And
Mhm.
when we finally had a scheduled Zoom meeting, they
Mhm.
said, listen, can you turn your camera on first? We want to make sure it's you. That's
Mhm.
how afraid some Jews are.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of people working anonymously. A lot of Jews are, and non-Jews, but more so Jews are in physical fear. People who've chosen to work anonymously, create anonymous profiles. And of course, there's a dilemma with doing that in the algorithms, whether or not you get caught. The anti realm seems to be able to have all the bots possible, billions and billions and billions of hate bots. But
Mhm.
the Jews are being targeted for a propaganda scheme, what's called hasbara. Everything we do is demonized.
I know.
So every voice you have,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
humanizes Israel, Jews, Israelis, because we are not just Jews, of course. Every voice of humanization helps to counter not only the lie, but also it spreads something positive that might encourage the other person that you're encountering. Is
Mhm.
there maybe other ideas that you guys would like to share about ways that you found to connect with anybody in your community that maybe was new, you didn't think about it before? Or even Robert, maybe you have new members who joined your community who never would have come to a prayer circle, but somehow they really feel ignited by the horrors of October 7th, and they feel a need to do more to humanize this story.
Oh, sure. I mean, I've been doing this prayer group since 2018 when me and my pastor and a bunch of others went to Israel. And I started there and it started off real slow. But when October 7th happened, it seemed to jolt a bunch of people into saying, I want to get involved in your prayer group that had never been involved before. And
Mhm.
so it's funny because I wanted to share this earlier. I didn't know if I was going to have the time, but one thing we have to always remember is God does not waste a tragedy. God does not waste a tragedy. Don't think that God's not paying attention. God knows what's going on here, and He loves Israel and He loves the Jewish people. And this morning, my pastor was preaching, teaching out of Psalm 11. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that psalm, but Psalm 11 says, the Lord examines the righteous, but the wicked, those who love violence, He hates with a passion. So we can take that to heart to say, God knows what's going on. Another scripture says, vengeance is mine. We can learn to rest and be men and women of integrity and stay true to who we want to be, and knowing that God is going to take care of things for us. It doesn't mean that we don't get involved and do our part, but God's involved too. And so we always have to remember that, because there's a lot of times that we all go through things in life that they're outside our control, and we really have, there's things that we try to do so much, but then there's the things that we don't have any control over. Well, God is still in control. God is sovereign. God is watching over this whole planet. And we have to understand that, because it will help us have that peace, that shalom that we need to when we go through rough times.
Yes.
The peace is not just meant for us to have peace in the midst of good times. True peace is when you can go through a rough time and still have the peace.
Right.
And so I just wanted to share that, because I'm hoping that can bless someone and give someone a little bit more confidence that no matter what we go through,
Yeah.
things are going to turn out right when we focus on the right things and keep doing and love, love the Lord with your whole heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's our calling in our life, is to love and to share goodness. That's what one day when we're all 6 foot under, that's what we're going to be held accountable for. How did we do that?
I will say that on October 7th, we witnessed not only the bestial tendencies that a human being can deteriorate to, but we also witnessed tremendous acts of good. We witnessed people who had been identifying themselves as having been what's called secular. In Hebrew, we say chiloni, as opposed to dati. So you have religious and you have secular. But you'll find that even the most secular of individuals found their way in prayer. Even last night, of course, right now we are seeing rally after rally in support of the return of our hostages and the Netanyahu plan, the ceasefire plan that we have trying to get all of our innocent home. The father, the grandfather of the Bibas family, he got up and he spoke a prayer. And it's fascinating here in Israel to see how many people have actually embraced prayer when they come from an unreligious connection. And I think that that's some of the miracle that we've been seeing. We also saw how many of our non-Jewish citizens risked their lives in order to save the Jews. And that does continue to give us light and to give us hope. I'll also echo the words of my master, Elie Wiesel, who, when he was asked after the Holocaust, how do you believe in God? His answer was, after the Holocaust, how do I believe in man? And I think October 7th awakened that question in many people.
Yeah.
How do we believe in man again? Maybe our faith in God has actually, I don't know, for people, it's been renewed, or at least a question raised, because there were so many instances of miracles that did take place and lives that were saved. There were, one man who went back and forth and back and forth. And not only did he save hundreds and hundreds of individuals, but he actually went back and he protected the dignity of the girls that he had found having been violated so brutally
Right.
at Nova. And the way that he describes them actually makes it impossible for us to listen. It's too painful. For those of you who maybe have seen Sheryl Sandberg's very powerful Screams Before Silence, it's a demonstrative of how we, whether or not we have faith right now, whether or not our faith is waning or in question, we have to make sure we're finding a voice even for those questions, to make sure that the truth is being shared. The violations that took place on that day, we have an obligation not only to those who were murdered and those who were kidnapped, but maybe we also have an obligation to every era in Jewish history where Jews have been persecuted. And what has sustained us has been our continued faith in God, that no matter the catastrophe, we will get through, we will survive. The eternal nation is not afraid of the long road. We know that we will win. We will lose many and have
Right.
lost many along the way. And we also, I want to share a few facts for you guys so that you realize that we're talking about hundreds upon hundreds of, of stopped terror attacks that take place in Israel every month. People who, massive attacks that have been thwarted. They often don't make the international media, so it is good. I heard you mention I-24. It's a great resource. There are some who rely on other media resources such as Times of Israel, Jewish News Syndicate, JNS is a wonderful platform. Many more opinion pieces and editorials, but very informative. I think that it's impossible to try and keep up with all of the news that comes out of Israel, all of the stories, and all of the pain. As we cross this 9-month mark and over the duration of the coming weeks, there is a
You got muted.
feeling, excuse me, there is a feeling of anxiety. How do we fight all these fronts of the battle simultaneously? It requires an inner strength. I think that, Robert, you raising the question of interfaith connections, adding prayer. I think these are really valuable, and it might be something that also could allow others in our global community to maybe come up with some creative connections that they might like to seek out wherever they live or even online. Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes prayer isn't just meant to for us to get the answer, get an answer to what we want. Sometimes prayer is more about us getting our hearts in line with what God wants, what He wants us to get. If we don't quiet our own self at times to listen, God will speak to us. You know, some people say, well, they have it in their gut, or there's a gut instinct, or there's some intuition that somehow God provides wisdom to us in ways that we don't often even understand. But sometimes prayer isn't always about, oh, it's about he didn't come through in the way I wanted him to. That doesn't mean that he didn't answer the prayer. Didn't mean that he wasn't listening. And God also listens to the prayers of non-believers, because I believe if they're done in sincerity from the heart, that he's listening and he wants to meet you wherever you're at. But I mean, you mentioned, I know Israel has gone through a horrific time since the 9 months, but I can't help living in the United States being reminded of what we went through with 9/11. It's a time of humbling, and it's a time of decision. Are we going to come together when a tragedy happens? Are we going to go at one another's throats? It's no different than when a marriage, a couple loses a baby. Often, sometimes you hear that because there's lots of blame that goes on, and that ends up destroying the marriage instead of it bringing the couple together closer. And we have to decide how we're going to allow these things to happen. If we see them with the right perspective, we're going to respond in the right way.
I think it's a perfect opportunity for us to invoke the weekly Torah portion that every week since October 7th, we're seeing that there are kernels of truth that are exposed in every single chapter as we read it. And, last week's chapter was the famous chapter of the spies who were sent in to identify the land. And you have those who come and they said, some of the spies, and they bring back these beautiful bushels of the grapes of the glorious land of milk and honey. And they say, this is an amazing land, and the land is so rich, and the fruit trees, and the fruit is so sweet. And the only dilemma are the people who are there. And then you have the spies who come and say the opposite, and they're very, very critical at what they share in common. And the only dilemma is that the people that are there, they are hate-hearted. They are a cruel people. And they go into this debate of, wait a second, is it a good land? Is it a good blessing? Or is it a warning that we shouldn't enter the land? And God says, in the end, that generation does not enter the land because of the dispute between them. And it's only the following generation that is actually welcomed into the land to be able to receive the blessing from God. But what do we see right after, which is actually this week's parasha, which is Korach, where we see a Jewish leader standing up and pretty much going against the people, going against God, going with his own ego. So I think that what we need to say at this 9-month turn is we also have to look at our leaders, look at our community. What are we doing? Judith, you made a very astute comment about how hate speech in Germany is illegal. Political criticism is acceptable. By the way, let's not forget that Germany also has instituted a policy where any citizen of Germany must sign on a declaration of Israel's right to exist. It's the only country in the world that has that. Some of us even wonder why Israel doesn't have that. We have traitors living amongst us who wish for the destruction of our own state. So one of the things that we can also ask is, what more can we do to encourage our leadership to remain filled with integrity, filled with so much hope that we can get from groups like your group, Robert, your prayer circles, Scott, your poetry, your efforts, Judith, to protect the facts, Zahara, your desire to connect one-on-one with people. We want to say thank you for coming together, and we want to end with a prayer for all of of course, the elderly and the soldiers and the boys and our babies. But we want, on this 9-month turn, to issue a prayer in our heart for our girls, our women, because the symbolism of 9 months escapes none of us. And as we end our community discussion, may our prayers give them strength, and may we see them returned home, and all of our soldiers returned home safely, peace on our borders, and peace in all of our hearts. I want to thank you guys for joining us tonight. This has been really an amazing discussion. I think that many other people of our global community will benefit from it. And I encourage you to reach out to us, israelforever.org. You can, of course, come and you can email us directly, and we'll be happy to help you in any way we can. The more we amplify each other's voice and each other's collective heart, the more of an impact we can have when humanity needs us now more than ever, in Israel and in every corner of the world. So thank you again for joining us tonight.
Thank
I look
you.
forward to speaking with all of you again soon. Be
So
well.
much. Bye-bye.
Later.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua tov.
Go to.
Shavua tov.